Aloha and good morning, everyone. This is Jeffrey Veia from the Board State, giving you an introduction on our show today, because today we're doing something very different, and I wanted to frame it for you all. We're going to be doing 5 articles instead of 10 articles, with the hopes of adding some video content to the board state. So rather than just passively listening, there will be some video that you can watch as well. We're not going to do that in this episode. Excuse me, which originally, to be honest, that was the whole reason for doing this, was that this episode we were going to add some video content alongside of the audio content. However, I have some outstanding projects that I have to get completed by tomorrow, and it's 9:15 on Sunday, so I'm going to be powering through all of that. So thank you for your patience. Please send questions, comments, poetry concerns to theboardstate@gmail.com. That's theboardstate@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and enjoy the episode. Today is June 7th, 7:40 a.m. in the morning. My name is Jeffrey Veia, aka Mr. V, and this is the Board State. I am joined with my buddy across the island. Who are you, sir?
Jack.
Jack. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How's the weather for you?
Warm.
Yeah.
Warm. I'm missing the cold. What are we, Jack? What is the board state? What do we do here?
We basically talks about positive change in the gaming community, whether that be board games, video games, ARGs, mobile, whatever that may be, as long as it affects their community in a positive light, we're talking on it. It could be triple A's, but we focus mostly on indies.
Amen to that. That's right. So we picked a series of articles that stood out to us in the previous week. We put them in a Google Doc, and we talk about them at length, sometimes jumping on the tangent train.
Yeah, several times.
Yes, absolutely. So that is what we are. Mm-hmm.
We should also mention this. This is also going to be an experiment today, because we normally do 10 articles, but now we're going to try out doing 5 articles. If you want us to stick with 10 or stick with this new system, let us know.
No, let's not give people the option to decide our fate. No, I'm kidding. Please let us know what you think about shrinking the article size down from 10 to 5, and where can they send those questions and comments, Jack?
dailycrafters@gmail.outlook.com.
Wow. Okay. Let me try. You can send your questions, comments, concerns. We also accept poetry, and that is at theboardstate@gmail.com. Again, that is theboardstate@gmail.com. Yeah, please excuse us. Again, it is 7:43 a.m. on a Sunday, so it's pretty early. All right,
yeah,
let's move over to our first article.
Sleep.
Okay, let's move over to our first article, which is by Tech Raptor, and it is Tabletop Pros talk about the impact of Gen Con cancellation. What is your thoughts on this, Jack?
Boom, 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 boom. Nah, for real, though, it really is a mixture of good and bad, but mostly bad.
Okay.
Because a lot of indies has been struggling a lot more with the pandemic, and also with now these new riots and whatnot. And so they really rely on these like big names, even if it's like a digital version of that, to really get their games out. Having Gen Con completely cancel really impacts them in a way where it's gonna make it them harder and more competitive to get into these other conventions. So it'd be locally, like for example, over here we have Amazing Con, and that's more of a local convention, or to the next big thing, which is like E3 or something. And even then, you're not a guarantee that they're gonna be a cancellation of that now, or they're gonna still have it on digital platforms. I really think what they did though was a positive thing, considering all of what's happening in the world right now and all of the things that I could understand where they're coming from, and safety first, of course, but the impact of losing Gen Con this year will be felt all across the industry, no matter how you see it. And even if you don't know what Gen Con is, Gen Con, just using that, really put more strain on other conventions such as Comic Con and stuff, if they still go through, because now more people will be relying on that to flush out all of these new content. But yeah.
Yeah. This is a big one. This is a big one. I would say it's more impactful than E3. E3 is a big deal. You know, it's a big media marketing kind of thing. But E3, you can do these things digitally, right? You could have a virtual conference and still be able to showcase these games in a virtual space. Gen Con's tabletop, man. It's all about being there, touching components, meeting up with people, and I can only imagine what it's going to do to the state of Ohio. I mean, yeah, this is a huge. I mean, I think Gen Con's been going on since the '70s, and it's been a big moneymaker, economic wise, for that state every year. And it's just been, I mean, pretty much doubling every year in terms of audience size. I've never went to one. I have no desire to go to a Gen Con. It's just too crazy. It's just too much people. I wouldn't be able to contain myself from purchasing everything in my site as well. But yeah, no, sorry, enough about me. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna see what happens. Gen Con is the Super Bowl of board gaming. Super Bowl, right? That's the football thing, right? Or is that basketball?
How about this? Just go with terms that you know. E3. Leave it at that, Mr. B.
Got it. Okay, but it is the mecca, you know, for the Hajj. It is the event that really board game designers try to time their releases around. You know, they have these exclusive Gen Con releases, things like that. So we'll see what's gonna happen. Will it make board games go away? Of course not. Of course not. We're still gonna have games. There's a lot of games that are released outside of Gen Con, but it is a huge marketing piece of the board gaming experience, at least in the United States. Essen is what Gen Con is, but for the Euro side of things, or the European side of things, and I believe Essen is canceled as well. I don't think I've seen any confirmations on that, but I would imagine it's going to be canceled. I know BGG is canceled, so I'm not going to that this year. Yeah.
This brings up a good overall question. If we see more cancellations in cons, for example, Comic Con and other cons that other game developers may use, whether that be video game or indie, do you see it being a negative impact overall, even though going into these cancellations is for a positive thing?
Do I see it more as negative or positive? Cancellations?
Yeah.
Oh, negative, absolutely. Mainly because I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why. From a player's perspective, I remember reading and actually speaking to some people about this as well at last BGG Con, is where they live in the States, they are 200 miles or whatever away from the closest gaming store. So the only gaming, tabletop wise, gaming experience they have is at these conventions, and they look forward to it, and they go to 3-4 of them a year, and that's the only time they get to really sit down with people and play. And it's, they see the same people, they hook up with their friends again, and they have a weekend of gaming fun and gaming purchasing. So by removing that element, yeah, there's going to be some people that are going to be suffering definitely because of that. On the positive side, there is alternatives as well in terms of gaming, right? Tabletop Simulator, which we talked about in a previous episode. Role-playing wise, there's Roll D20. Certainly Discord as well is taking a part of that. So it's I think there's, especially for the tabletop space, I think there's more negatives than positive, other than spreading the virus more, and getting that second wave like the Spanish flu. I definitely am going to feel the loss of not being able to go to Tabletop this year, Tabletop Network event, and then BGG as well. That was heaven for me last year. Mm-hmm. That way I went to it.
Yeah.
All right. So that is Tabletop Pros talk about the impact of Gen Con cancellation on Tech Raptor. It's actually interesting is Tech Raptor is normally a like a hardware, PC, computer, digital gadget site, right? And for them to cover this, that's kind of cool how it kind of spilled over to the other side. All right, next article is by Wellsboro Gazette, and this is KeyStone Games announces PA Senior Games, and this is an article that you found, Jack. What is this article about?
So basically, how current events shape it, whether you like it or not, it has been shaping all of the other industries. One notable one is sports, and how people consume it, how people play it, and how people understand the game. And so, after coming through such a traumatic experience, it's understandable that many will often use the new change into said events. This is one of those things where the PA Senior Sports Festival and Health was mainly to showcase physical health and fitness for their seniors. But now, due to the pandemic, I'm realizing how much gaming has helped many of them seniors. They're realizing the potential of esports. And so, going back to several times where we said in prior episodes all about esports and how they're shaping the path to sports, this is another example of that. And another way where gaming will continue to lead basically the flag bearers of this new age, whether we want to or not. And so that's the main thing about this whole article.
Cool, very cool. Very cool. So what are some of the outcomes that they're doing that's different with this event now?
Well, most notably they're making a more focus on esports, not really on the physical sports side. Because of this new understanding of the mental health, it's now your target audience, no longer the physical health. Everybody knows, okay, you run, you hike, okay, you're gonna get healthy. You eat better, you're gonna get healthy. But a lot of sports analysts and even senior analysts are now realizing that if you're at a bad mental state, no matter how much you try, you won't be able to complete anything. So esports has really been showcasing this whole new ideas of basically changing that mental state, but also keeping that competitiveness, which you will see in basketball, football, and so applying that into a situation where seniors was almost about to die in many states, or was in the high risk sector, thanks to this pandemic. So basically, a combination of factors convinced them to make esports the focus of this new festival.
Wow, that is really cool. I'd like to see a senior citizens, like a 70 to 90 age bracket for esports. It'd be awesome.
No, I want to see it like a Super Smash Bros. Like Pro that's like 80 years old, and he's
why not?
18 years old from Asia.
Yeah. I know there was this. Oh my gosh! And I thought we were gonna go through a whole episode without mentioning Animal Crossing. I'm so sorry. There was this 90-year-old woman who spent like, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of hours playing a previous Animal Crossing, but I just thought that was awesome. I mean, Animal Crossing aside, you know, for someone at that, that part of her life. Yeah, sure. But for someone to be in that, you know, part of her life journey, right? And to see the benefits of playing video games, you know, that's super heartwarming, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you gotta realize, like, a lot of these guys that's going to these festivals are probably in retirement homes, so most likely they were at risk. So the fact that they're doing esports now to make sure their minds are more healthy, but also to convince them to explore more, it's gonna benefit the industry in the long run. Because now you have game developers.
No, go ahead, please finish. Sorry.
Now you have game developers who has access to new information and new ideas that they could apply to games. For example, one set of seniors could be talking about civil rights. Another set of seniors could be talking about how beautiful the ocean is in its deepest and darkest form. You now have new ideas that could come out thanks to this age bracket. So yeah.
I was gonna say, like how we are really right now building games within the health industry, right? Like we're building around, you know, prenatal care and things like that, as an additional project later. Not right now. There's tons of stuff going on, but we could maybe develop games with seniors in mind that they could play. That, you know, maybe with a less cognitive load on gameplay, lighter gameplay, more strategic decisions for the senior demographic. Yeah?
I'm guessing that's our next project, guys. So I will see you in the next 3 months in our bunker, cause beat me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So KeyStone announces PA Senior Games. That is on tiogapublishing.com, which is the Wellsboro Gazette. All right. Next article is by Forbes.com. I tend to find a lot of Forbes articles in our cast.
It's not Forbes, it's Gaming Sutra. Gamma Sutra.
Gamma Sutra. Yeah, but I'd like to run something like a script or something that aggregates or parses out what articles and from which sources, and kind of see like on a diagram, you know, where we pull most of our articles from. I'd be interested to see that news. Okay, and which is also nothing about what we're talking about today. So this is by Forbes.com, and this is moving towards a story-driven entertainment metaverse. And this one really stood out to me and brought some tears to my eyes. Jack, what are your thoughts on this article?
We all hold the term metaverse after we had experience it through Marvel, and that being all of the actors that is involved in each movie and then coming together in an endgame like thing, or basically the ideal of, or the scientific concept of that. We all have, whether we like to or not, been exposed to this idea. And so the fact that game engines are now trying to do this only opens more possibilities and more ideas and more potential value that the industry could use game engines for. And if you don't know what a metaverse is, it's basically, if I remember correctly, Mr. V, you could call me out, is that you have one universe and you then have 10 universes, all connected to this one universe. And each universe has like a different alternate thing. So one universe could be the Nazis won World War II. The next universe could be the Soviets won the Cold War. Or to a point where, oh, Senator Lindsey Graham's never born, was not born. Basically, the smallest of changes to the biggest of changes, but all with having core actors. For example, our core actors will be like our presidents, or 50 something of them. And so the presidents will still be the same, but just certain events will change. A good example of this will be actually Marvel and how they have alternate realities, but they still go back to this one central universe in the comic books.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly it, pretty much. That was an interesting sentence. That was exactly it, pretty much. I don't know. You give me both. It's early. I'm still tired. Okay. Yes. All that. All what you just said. So what this article really highlights, and the reason why I included this, is how outside of the gaming industry, whether it's corporate America or just any kind of business or workforce, how they look at gaming to drive their industry forward. For example, PCs, computers, what really drives innovation in terms of hardware is gaming. Gaming keeps pushing that innovative watermark forward. It's always been gaming. So yes. So in this article, what the Washington Post and Forbes.com is describing is how gaming engines are going to be used to power the next form of the internet. And really, gaming engines has been used in AI right now, movie creation, things like that, things that the gaming engines were not intended to be used for. And then at a, no pun intended, at a meta level, it really to look at how gaming itself as a medium can be used outside of gaming, right? So like things that we do where we teach people, lesson plan, and educate people based on board gaming, creating board games and video games and things like that. So I just wanted to really highlight this article. I think they did a fantastic job describing how gaming can be used outside of its own form, and then really to employ our audience to start looking at how gaming can be used outside of gaming, and beyond gamifying and emergent things.
And plus, you also have ARGs coming out and becoming more and more popular. So, and that is basically taking core aspects of what we believe in and then flipping it on your head to a point. The ending of it, whether you get something or not, the lesson of the core values that you once hold dear may be in question or even change now, thanks to this ARG that you may have experienced.
Yep. So very cool article, which is moving towards a story-driven entertainment metaverse by Forbes.com. Check that one out. Next article is by Polygon.com, and it is your summer games reading list. Now, I personally try to collect as much game design and game-oriented books as possible, so this naturally stood out to me. But it's just a quick highlight. It is just a list of game-related books that you may want to read, and some are fictional, some are non-fictional. It's a nice aggregated list. We should actually probably make one of these. Spoiler alert. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this article, Jack?
Honestly, I feel like this article really demonstrates the scope of gaming right now, and also demonstrates the interaction of the industry with both video gaming, board gaming, ARGs, and now even VR and mobile. And so, like, for example, the very first article you see is explanation stories. And these are basically short stories. And it keeps on leading down. Then you get a game of Bards and Wolves, which is about World War II and the military, which I potentially may want to buy because you know me and you know this podcast. But the main articles that I'm mainly interested in will be like Pain Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, which is, if you haven't played this game, it's basically about a mercenary trying to understand the war in the most cruel of lenses. And the game was made by Kojima, and so this is probably his love letter to the series. And so that's one story that I may potentially actually read. Another story will be Delicious in Dungeon. And I know Mr. V would love to talk about that one, so I'm going to leave that one to him. But
Thank you.
Basically, overall, this article is showcasing the scale of everything. You don't have to just go into a stealth game and expect to not go into a strategy game. So it also poses an idea to game developers, which is, what if you do multi-concepts that completely against each other? For example, a stealth strategy tactical-based game. Stuff like that.
Yeah, man. That was well done. Well done. You're absolutely correct. That's something that I didn't even really realize, but this is a good this is a good advertisement board of what are the different facets that gaming can do, right? Because it covers the entire spectrum, really. I mean, well, a broad spectrum at least. The reason why I wanted to include this article is because Jack alluded to it. Delicious in Dungeon, man. Okay, so Delicious in Dungeon. Delicious in Dungeon is a dungeon crawler based on a manga series by Ryoko Kui, which I haven't read yet. It's also on a there may or may not be sites that you could go to that has the manga online as a webcomic. I may or may not have seen it, but it may or may not be online. So it's based on a manga by Ryoko Kui, and it moves away from the typical sword and sorcery dungeon tactics, dungeon crawlers. And then in Delicious in Dungeon, players survive by preparing meals that would make Gordon Ramsay salivate by the very monsters that they're defeating. So like these broke adventurers that are dungeon crawling, that have really horrible equipment, but they're preparing these amazing meals, by killing goblins and dragons and things like that. I just love that. It's so cool. And so again, we talked about this last week, right? Fresh ideas, new ways of looking at media, new ways of looking at the medium. So cool. I really want to look further into this. It's not just to kind of read through it and see really like the core mechanics and what this game is about. Delicious in Dungeon.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's your Animal Crossing rank for this episode.
How was this an Animal Crossing grant?
No, because so in Animal Crossing, the cooking mechanic.
There's no cooking yet. It's coming out in an update.
Oh my god!
It's coming up. It's coming up. But dude, there's way too much stuff to do already. Okay, it's like Animal Crossing is like a part-time job for me right now. I'm also rebuilding my city. Yeah. So this is an article by Polygon.com, a list of really cool board game related books. Okay.
A good article from Polygon. Choo.
Yeah, I know. Let's not go further into that. Next. So next article is our final article for the day, and this is by Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT.edu, and this is Pandemic Inspires Students to Create Interactive Narrative Board Game About Isolation. What are your thoughts on this article, Jack?
I feel, first off, the game itself, it's probably gonna gain more traction because it's not really just about the pandemic, but you're tacking on a game mechanic that it's super, super hard to do, which is an interactive story. And you could do it on like physically, tactilely, but it's much more harder to code it because then you have to code in the reactions and stuff like that. Even though it's only text-based, you still have to code that in. And the fact that these students are doing that in what appears to be at least an indie level tier should be commended for and will probably gain them more traction in the long run. But overall, we use this same system, which was I forgot what it's called. Twine. Twine. Yeah. Sorry. But it's just that even though it's an introduction level system, you could still see the potential and the scaling of that by making a game such as this. Even though it's about the pandemic, by making the game not with a beginner level entry, and that it looks like an indie skill entry, should not only be commended, but will probably give them more traction overall. But
yeah, we've used the very engine that what's his name, Sean Arnold used to create this game, which is called Twine. And Twine is a narrative gaming engine where you can create these like branching choose your own adventure-esque paths. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of other like back-end things that you can do to like save data. So if there's stats that you want to record locally in the system, you can do so. You can code all that stuff into it. So yeah, so just like what Jack said, it's completely scalable. It's a really cool engine. I recommend it to everybody to download. It's free. You can just Google Twine narrative game engine and you can find it. It's super awesome. Now about this game, so this game, it's a horror game. Players are traveling the desolate Arctic Ocean aboard a Soviet frigate named Pereshmenik, which means mockingbird in Russian. And the crew lives in isolation. They only have each other to interact with, and is about to discover that the sea hides a terrifying secret. Dun dun dun. But really, Sean Arnold developed this game as a way to really describe what he was going through in isolation, mm-hmm. and mirrored that experience in a gameplay experience. And that's really what I wanted to highlight, is how you can take experiences that you're going through, like writers do, right? They'll write about it and maybe change the narrative a little bit. So rather than just going through depression, you can be someone that is climbing a mountain with weight on your back or something like that, to use an analogy, right, as a writer. So you can do these things in a gaming engine as well, things like Twine, like I mentioned, Unreal. These are quick to build engines that doesn't really require a lot of coding, but is again absolutely scalable, where you can ramp up your skill set to add more features to these engines. So I think this is a very healthy thing to do. Whether or not it's going to make $1 million, I think really the return of investment is what happens to your mind post making something like this, right?
Yeah. And it brings up this idea of now writers from, like, for example, that is more common to write books to come into the industry in a level of entry where they don't feel overwhelmed, but they also feel that it's a good challenge for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it possesses that entry if you want to get into game development, but you only have experience in writing. This is a good engine to do so.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to end our cast. We don't have any questions.
I actually want to ask you something.
Okay.
If you can.
Go for it. Yeah. Well, let me just finish my sentence. So please, again, we ran out of questions. So send us your questions for the cast, game related, of course, please, to theboardstate@gmail.com. All right, Jack, go for it.
So we saw how the Division imitates how the scenario the military did to make the whole story arc. Mm-hmm. And now it's happening IRL. My question is...
not the Division. The Division... Well, there is sort of a panic, but not as, like, to scale of the Division.
Well, not that, but...
Okay.
At this point, yeah. If you don't know what the Division storyline is, it's basically pandemic protests, agents deploy. So, but my question is, do game developers should be afraid, or when using or talking big scenarios like this, if something like how the Division has basically predicted the future almost to a T?
So the question is... Oh, no, go ahead.
Should game developers tackle controversial future subjects?
Absolutely. It's like political satire, right? It's the way to talk about these subjects in a very safe place and explore it from all angles. I think that's why political satire is so impactful, because you're like laughing. You're automatically disarmed by the subject matter because you're laughing. But yeah, dude, totally. I mean, pick your game. This War of Mine, Block by Block, the board game, like whatever. Yeah, absolutely. There's some really good examples of this in the tabletop space as well. Games like, I think it's called Trains, about loading Jewish people onto a train to go to the gas chamber, like exploring like what that feels like. Games like Freedom, the Underground Railroad, where you're trying to save slaves by moving them up north, right? And what it feels like to play those games. I think we talked about this before. I'll mention it again. There was I guess you could call it an experiment. There was an experiment that was done where I think it was the United Nations. They needed to make a decision on something. It might not have been the United Nations, but there was these people in the positions of power to make a very large, impactful decision to impact, I think it was Africa or something like that. And they were very removed from what was happening there. So what this team did was they put on these VR goggles on them, this VR heads-up display, and allowed them to see firsthand what was happening in those places, and to feel and to feel emotionally, because now they're there. They're no longer in that room where they are literally there walking on the soils of what's going on, and they changed their mind. Like they're like, okay, no, don't send any more troops or whatever it was. So that is, and the difference between reading a book or watching a documentary or something like that and a game is you're interacting with the medium. You yourself are making decisions that you will impact how the story unfolds, or if people live or die. And then the feedback loop of that is then you feel it because you were part of that narrative. So yeah, man, absolutely.
So that's the one question for today. If you don't know, you better send us.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for listening. Have a great, safe, healthy week.
Aloha.